Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Friday, August 6th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching it and supporting people in learning some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagiin.org. If you go to that website and click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great advantage for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and using it directly to turn any negative emotional experience into part of the infallible guidance system that each one of us has been gifted. You can also download the actual worksheet itself. It's a simple PDF file. You can click on it, download it, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words, Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and get access to a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows like this one, where people have been stepped through the use of that tool and or they've given powerful testimonials about how the use of that tool has improved their life quality and their relationships. And we hope people do that soon and often, because that frequently provokes comments and questions. If you have a comment or a question, give us a call, 563-999-3581, or email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or email Jeannie at jeanie@yagain.org. This year we're also doing the Course in Miracles lessons and through the workbook of Course in Miracles. Today is the 218th day of the year. We continue our review with the reminder, I am not a body. I am free, for I am as the Creator created me. And today is a review of Lesson 198, which reads, Only my condemnation injures me. Only my condemnation can injure me. My condemnation keeps my vision dark, and through my sightless eyes, I cannot see the vision of my glory. Yet today I can behold this glory and be glad. So I remind myself that I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as the Creator created me. We're also doing the Pam Grout Course in Miracles experiment book, and her lesson 218 is titled, Is it fact or just a long-held cultural belief? She quotes Annie Lamott as saying, I pray for the change in perception that will let me see bigger and sweeter realities. Pam writes, WebMD and other, quote, authorities, close quotes, insist that you need 8 hours of sleep, that there's a disease called seasonal affective disorder, SAD, S-A-D, that inflicts havoc every winter, and that gaining weight is inevitable if you don't rigorously watch what you eat. But what if these beliefs were nothing but flimsy ideas made true by believing in them, by investing in them, and by holding them up as scientific fact? If consciousness provides the scaffolding for the physical world, and the course in miracles and quantum physics tells me that it does, energy into any belief encrusts it into physical form. Most of us can buy that we have some power over our own reality, but we don't make the correlation that groupthink, those facts of our culture, our medical community, or our media tout as true, are also temporary forms of reality, in quotes. Who's to say what is and isn't possible? Do I want to believe the widely expanding diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders? Or do I want to believe what pharmaceutical companies insist I need? Do I want to believe that what happened yesterday is going to happen again today? Or do I want to create a new day, a new reality, and a new world? So that's Pam Grout's offering. I am not a body. I am free, for I am still as the Creator created me. And that's our lesson 218 from Course in Miracles workbook. So let us know your comments or your questions, 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I can announce you by your area code, and we can have a conversation. What's on your mind today? Or how can we serve you today? How can we be of service? That's our entire intention for being here, is to be of service. And when you call and ask a question or suggest a topic, it makes it easier for us to live into that intention. And we'd be happy to have you join us and do that. We have about 50 minutes left. Helen, is this Helen? Ellen.
Ellen, yes.
It has been a while. Welcome, Ellen.
Oh, thank you. I was curious to know, I started reading a new book. It's actually a book I bought 9 years ago, and I never read it. For some reason, I was just drawn to start reading it. And curious as to if you have read this or any of this author's books. The author is Richard Moss, M-O-S-S, and the book I'm reading is called Inside Out Healing.
No, it's not familiar to me.
Okay. So the subtitle is Transforming Your Life Through the Power of Presence. And I find that, it's in complete alignment with everything else that you talk about. And it's yet another way of doing the work that we're all doing. It's most closely aligned with Byron Katie's the work, but it's like her work, but it goes deeper, and it's more expansive and deeper, I would say. But he's got a similar worksheet. I think it's called the Muddy Me worksheet, where you take, whatever stressful situation you may be in, and you write down all of the stories you tell yourself about that situation. But you divide them up between the stories that are about you, the stories that are about anything other than you, the stories that are in the past, and the stories that are in the future. And he says these are really the only 4 ways that the ego pulls us out of the now moment and into the story. It's always about one of those 4. So his process is he teaches first and foremost how to become present, how to actually be in the now moment. And then his process, which is called the mandala of being, you actually create a mandala that, like, on the floor or on the table, wherever you want to do it. You can actually do it with your whole body. If you do it on the floor and you move yourself. You anchor yourself in the now. You start in the center of the circle, and then you take each of these stories that you've created. Let's say it's a me story, and you move to a me position on the mandala, and you experience. You put what it is that when you believe that story about yourself, what it is that you feel. You just directly experience it. And then you move yourself, after you've done that, then you move yourself back to the now position, and you experience what it feels like to no longer believe that thought about yourself. And it goes on. It's a whole long process, and you can. But so it's very much like the two questions in Byron Katie's work, how does this thought make me feel? How does believing this thought make me feel? And then, who am I without this thought? And then he also goes deeper into,
lots of echoes of that. Yes.
Yes, and then he also he takes it a step further, where you come up with all of the opposite positions. So if you're believing one thing about yourself, well, then there's an opposite position about yourself, and you go back and forth between those, just like the turnarounds that, there's many different ones, and he takes you through all the different kind of opposites. If it's about another person, I don't trust this person, and it's well, I do trust this person, or this person doesn't trust me, or, and then you take it all home. I don't trust myself. Oh, I do trust myself. And in the end, you release each pair of the opposites to, again, just anchor yourself right back into that, just being in the now moment without any of it. So it's very interesting, and I like the process. I actually haven't tried it yet because I just read about it this morning. But I thought, wow, I wonder if Dr. Tim is familiar with this, because, again, it's right in alignment.
Is this the book, The Mandala of Being?
No, but that is another one of his books. I think he wrote before this one, and that one, he said in this book that, he describes the whole process in this book, but he said if you want to get even more in-depth into the process, then read his book, The Mandala of Being.
And then what's the title of this book?
Healing. I think this may have been his latest one.
But you said you've had it for years and not read it?
Yes. Yeah. And it was all of a sudden, I had just finished reading The Impersonal Life again, which that book to me is just such a gem. And I was okay, what next? And then all of a sudden it was I remembered that I had this book that I never read. And it was oh, okay, I think it's time to pull this out. And I was so surprised when I started reading it. It's wow, yeah, I think this is a good one to read. So I was just curious if you had read it, if you had done any of, this process that he describes. And, it's
no,
just
but it
another
sounds like a very similar process to the Byron Katie work, as you were mentioning.
Exactly. It's just a little more... It's more embodied in that he has you really concentrate on the feeling and the direct experience, and to really take you out of, instead of, and she, I think she describes that too. It's not just you ask yourself the question and just take whatever comes into your mind. You really got to go deep with it. And so he really describes that process of, really feeling into, and again, it's because he has you create an actual mandala, on the floor, and you step into the different positions, and it's more of just an embodied process than one where you're just sitting and thinking and meditating about it. So I really like it. Like I said, I'm not even halfway through the book, but just I got through the whole description of that process, and I thought I would.
All right.
Call
well, I'll look into it.
Okay.
Thanks for the suggestion.
You're welcome.
I think the one book, The Mandala of Being, was in 2010, and the one you're reading is in 2011. So he wrote them in consecutive years, or at least published them in consecutive years.
Okay. The other one that I saw that really kind of appealed to me it's called The Second Miracle. And that, from what I understand, the way he describes the first miracle is the miracle of actually the creation of the ego, the small personal self. And then the second miracle, or the self, and then the second miracle is the emergence of the non-self, the true, or you could say the true self. And that one looked really interesting to me too. People, give really great reviews on that. But it's interesting because I've never heard anyone mention this man's name before, and I'm not even sure how I found this book. I'm sure it wasn't recommended to me. I think I was just out on Amazon or something and came across it and thought, wow, this looks really good, and purchased it and then never read it. So
it might have been the algorithm on Amazon, because when you start doing spiritual books, they start suggesting other spiritual type books. So
yeah, could be. So I guess he used to be an MD.
Yeah, that's what it's listed on the book.
Yeah,
on the cover,
and
Richard Moss, MD.
What I read in one of the reviews is that he, I guess while he was an MD, he had a spiritual awakening, and that's what just took him out of that and into what he's doing now.
Well, I'll check it out.
Okay.
Thank you for the suggestion. Any other comments or questions or topic suggestions?
I don't think so. I just, want, for anyone who's listening who has not yet read The Impersonal Life, I would like to recommend that, because that, to me, is... And what's interesting is that book just was handed to me by a friend of mine several years ago, and as soon as he handed it to me, I was like, oh, I recognize the cover, because and I realized that it was a book my father must have lent me. My father was very, very, he was like my spiritual mentor ever since I really got on my spiritual path. And he used to lend me books. And my copy of the book has this really interesting drawing on the front cover, and I just always... it's like it looks like one thing. It's one of those drawings. You look at it one way and you see one thing, and then you look at it, keep looking at it, and all of a sudden it turns into something else. And it's especially, I think, powerful for me just because of some things I've gotten in the past, like that I didn't know anything, like what does this mean? But I see it, even just like one day I just drew this symbol, and I got so excited. I'm like, I have no idea what this symbol means. Why am I getting so excited? I just knew it was really, really important. And you can see this symbol on the front cover if you look at it a certain way, and then it's also like inside the front cover. Well, anyway, I went on the internet the other day to find the book. I was going to get it for someone, and I noticed that there's like different versions with different covers. None of them have the cover that's on mine. And I just thought that was really interesting because I thought that this cover was such an important part of the book for me, just like looking at that drawing.
Well, it was just what you needed.
I guess so. I was very curious.
It was orchestrated by part of that impersonal aspect.
Right.
The
right.
creation.
So I don't think that it's the original, because it looked like the original version is just like a plain cover with the the title on the front cover. And in fact, all of the ones that I saw had the title on the cover. Mine does not have any words on the cover at all. It's just the drawing. The only place you see the title of the book is on the binding. So I just thought, and I thought, well, that's very strange. So if this wasn't the original cover, where did this drawing come from? And when did it, you know what I mean? Like, it's just very, it's a real mystery to me.
Yeah, I mean, it'd probably take a little research to discover that.
Yeah. So you're the one that you have? I think you have it, right?
I don't have it. I accessed it through christmind.info.
Oh, okay.
christmind.info.
Okay.
And that's where I learned about it, and that's the only way I've accessed it.
Okay. Well, mine is actually very small. It's only like maybe 4 inches high by 4 inches wide. It's a very small book. It's just different from any other book I've ever seen, just to look at it. And then with that drawing on the front, it's so very curious.
When you go to christmind.info, there's one cover that just has kind of a gold color antiqued paper or something with black letters on it that says The Impersonal Life, Joseph S. Benner.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one says Get Acquainted with Joseph S. Benner, and it looks like, a half moon with cranes flying in front of it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I have no idea where this drawing came from. But, yeah, maybe I'll have to do some research and see if I can. Because it obviously was, it was definitely meant to go with the book, because there's some, there's a part in the book where he talks about the 3-in-1, and this drawing clearly depicts the 3-in-1. So it's, it's meant to be part of the book, but I don't think it was the original cover, so I don't know who added it at some point, and then why did it get taken away? Because it's not what's being offered today.
Well, I will look at the Moss book and give some feedback if I get a chance to read that soon, and I appreciate the input.
Okay.
And I can also recommend to people The Impersonal Life by Joseph S. Benner. We've explored much of that book. I don't think we made it all the way through it in our Thursday group, but again, same messages as Course in Miracles and Way of Mastery, and just a slightly different take on it.
Yes. Yes, but I think it's my favorite of all of them, because it seems so intimate, when you're reading it, that God is speaking directly to you. And
well, and yeah, parts of it are written that way, just that way. Like, here's the divine. And he was born in 1872 and died in 1894 at the age of 69. Or, I'm sorry, in 1941. He married in 1894. And he was a businessman most of his life and died at 69 years of age and left this gem.
Yeah.
The Impersonal Life.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you for the call. And,
okay, you're welcome.
And I'll explore that.
Okay,
Anything
great.
else for you today?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, nice to hear from you. Thanks for chiming in. And I'll look forward to the next time you choose to add some content.
Okay. Blessings, Dr. Tim.
So we have 32 minutes left, 34 minutes left, something like that. 563-999-3581 is our call-in number. How can we support you? Have you read the Moss book? Have you read The Impersonal Life? Do you have comments or questions about anything to do with our Course in Miracles lesson today or the Pam Grout Course in Miracles experiment commentary on that lesson? How could it be that I am not a body, I am free, and I'm still as the Creator created me? How is it that we have such a powerful process of perception that leaves us perceiving that we're right and the other person's wrong, even when we're in pain? How is it that we live in a culture where we've been trained to believe that we know what's going on, and we will literally fight for the continuation of a process of life and perception that leaves us in agony? How could that be? How might we wake up to realize that we are creating our experience of life? And how might we step into the amendment of that process so we create a more loving, joyful, happy life? We have tools available for that. We have 10 years of 5 days a week and 1 hour a day, and 8 years of 1 hour a day, and 2 years of 2 hours a day, talking about that very thing. What is it that is in our process of living life, thinking, and perceiving that has us creating our own pain and suffering, and then arguing and fighting for how we must know what's going on and we must be right, even though we're miserable, even though we acknowledge we don't like what we're feeling? That's a powerful question. That's part of what Pam Grout is trying to talk about from our Course in Miracles lesson today and her take on it. Is the fact of my life actual? Or is it just the product of a long-held cultural belief? How have I come to believe that I'm right and the people and the world around me are wrong, even when I'm angry, sad, scared, hurt, confused, or feeling vengeance or rage? How is it that despite the fact that I don't like any of those feelings, argue for how I'm right even when I'm in the middle of those feelings? If something about that doesn't seem quite right to you, we invite your comments and your questions. If something about that is wearing you down and making you feel like this life isn't worth living and I don't want to keep doing this, we have some tools that you might use to uncover, to discover, and then begin to dismantle the actual process you're using to create the misery in your own life. And the tools are available at whyagain.org. And those tools are basically all we talk about here on Mindshifters Radio. We had a support group last night, and we had somebody do a worksheet. And then we had other people who did their worksheets and discussed them. Then we had a conversation about the lecture, the seminar, the recording of a seminar that's available absolutely free at mindshiftersacademy.org on the educational materials page. And the title of that is Saying Goodbye to Good People Without Saying Goodbye to Good Memories. And there was somebody in the group last night who was considering writing a letter to someone that she was ending a relationship with, and considering two options. One was responsibility communication, three options, actually. One was just a goodbye letter, and one was this process of how to say goodbye to good people without saying goodbye to good memories. And that remains one of the more useful tools I've ever been exposed to and or been a part of creating. And if you want access to that, if you are coming to a turning point in one of your relationships, if you are acknowledging the ending of a relationship or the ending of a phase in a relationship that might be of use to you, it's available free at mindshiftersacademy.org on the educational materials page, and it's titled How to Say Goodbye to Good People Without Saying Goodbye to Good Memories. And there are 2 audio files, about an hour each, recordings of the seminar, and there's a PDF file that contains a list of the categories that I find quite useful when applying that tool. So it's just another of the many resources available absolutely free to try and live into our intention of being of service. So how can we be of service to you today? What's on your mind? We have 25 minutes left. 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. I was mentioning the other day that I'm going through the book Awareness one more time. It's one of those books that I read once or twice a year. It's by Anthony DeMello. And the way his sense of humor and what I learned years after reading this book is that it's basically just made of transcripts of kind of seminars he gave or talks he gave or retreats he did. And so here is a very intelligent, very open, honest person who tells stories on himself, who has been studying spirituality for a long time, and he has a wonderful way, a conversational way of relating. And I remember one of the things from very early in the book, he was talking about how people think that they should change so that other people are happy, and vice versa. Other people should change so they're happy. And so he asked his audience once when he was on the seminar circuit or the retreat circuit, he said, so do you think that you should change who you are or give up what you love in order to make your partner happy or in order to make your partner feel loved? And the audience said, yes. And he said, wow, just think about that. So I do what I don't like, so I make myself unhappy so that you'll feel loved. And you do the same thing. You make yourself unhappy so I'll feel loved, and then we have 2 miserable people, but we've got what you call love. How crazy is that? His ability to look at things and bring them right down to the core, very simple, struck me from the first time I read his stuff as genius. You know, he has people say when they come to his seminars, will I be of help? Are you going to help me if I come to your retreat? And he says, no, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help anybody. If I did, I would be doing more damage to you than help. If I tried to help you, if you get damage, you did it. If you get helped, you did it. It's kind of one of the cores of what I talk to people about in my therapy work, and I did it for decades, even before meeting Dr. Michael Rice, but I would have people occasionally, and the energy, the resonance would be there, the chemistry would be there, and they would have so much benefit from the therapy that they would say, oh my gosh, Dr. Hayes, you saved my life, or you saved my child, and I would say, no, you've really missed the point there. I didn't do anything except show up and do what I always do with people. If you had any idea how many people I've said the very same kinds of things to, if you knew how many people I've introduced to calming breath work and being gentle with themselves and canceling goals and using the Reality Management Worksheet and doing EFT tapping, if you had any idea how many people I presented this body of work to who thought I was crazy, either left in the middle of a session or left after a session and never came back, then you would start to realize how true it is that you're the one who heals. You're the one who makes a positive change in your life. Not the therapist, not the priest, not the magician, not the healer. You are the one who makes a change in your life. If you pick up the tools and apply them in your life, you can initiate change. If you reject the tools, if you accept the tools but don't apply them in your life, change isn't going to happen. There are a number of people who talk about, spiritual evolution and the evolution on the planet. And there are a number of other teachers that say, look, I got news for you. This evolutionary process doesn't just automatically happen. You have to choose to let go of the stuff that doesn't work and apply tools and do more of the stuff that does. You're not going to get enlightened just because you do stuff or just because you're moving. It might have been Guy Finley or it might have been somebody else who said, if just doing something, anything, would eventually lead to evolution, then our washing machines would become enlightened because they agitate and they spin and they vibrate. But spinning and going nowhere is not about what enlightenment is or about progress or learning or healing. So if you're motivated to look for, find, and then discover tools that might help you understand yourself, understand the process of life, as I like to say, that's unfolding in, through, as, and around you in this moment, if you discover more of how that works, and then you choose to use that knowledge in being a certain way, moment to moment, you will initiate change. But no one else is going to change you. Anthony DeMello says, take a minute to think about this. Do you think you help people because you're in love with them? You're never in love with anyone. You're only in love with your prejudiced and hopeful idea of that person. Take a minute to think about it. You're never in love with anyone. You're in love with your prejudiced idea of that person. Isn't that how you fall out of love? Your idea changes, doesn't it? How could you let me down when I trusted you so much? Or you say to somebody, you aren't the way you used to be. You don't love me because you won't do this or that. Did you really trust that person? You never really trusted anyone. Come off of it. That's part of society's brainwashing. You never trust anybody. You trust your judgment about that person. And so what are you complaining about? The fact is that you don't like to say, quote, my judgment was lousy, close quotes. Why? Because that's not very flattering to me. So I prefer to say, how could you have let me down? Don't try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and it irritates the pig. Don't try to convince people that you love them. Same thing as trying to teach a pig to sing. And here's that quote I was referencing. A woman once told me when she was a child, her Jesuit cousin gave a retreat in the Jesuit Church of Milwaukee. He opened the conference with these words: the test of love is sacrifice, and the gauge of love is unselfishness. That's marvelous. So I asked her, would you want me to love you at the cost of my own happiness? And she answered, yes. And then I said, isn't that delightful? Wouldn't that be wonderful? She would love me at the cost of her happiness, and I would love her at the cost of my happiness. And so now we've got two unhappy people, but long live love. So there are pearls and gems through that entire book, Awareness. And as I was mentioning before, there was this image he created to help us understand the difference between concentration and awareness. So concentration is like a laser beam or a fine little spotlight, and awareness is like a bank of floodlights. Here's a funny story. He says, there's a story of little Johnny, who they say was mentally retarded. But evidently he wasn't, as you'll learn from this story. Johnny goes to modeling class in his school for special children, and he gets this piece of putty, and he's molding it. He takes a lump of putty and goes to a corner of the room, and he's playing with it. The teacher comes up to him and says, hi, Johnny. And Johnny says, hi. And the teacher says, what's that you've got in your hand? And Johnny says, this is a lump of cow dung. The teacher asks, what are you making of it? And Johnny says, I'm making a teacher. Well, the teacher thinks little Johnny has regressed. So she calls out to the principal, who is passing by the door at that moment, and says, Johnny has regressed. So the principal goes up to Johnny and says, hi, son. Johnny says, hi. And the principal says, what do you have in your hand? And he says, a lump of cow dung. The principal asks, and what are you making of it? Johnny says, a principal. The principal thinks that this is a case for the school psychologist. So he calls out, send for the psychologist. Now, the psychologist is a clever guy, and he goes up and he says, hi. And Johnny says, hi. And the psychologist says, I know what you've got in your hand. And Johnny says, what? And the psychologist says, you've got a lump of cow dung. And Johnny says, you're right. And the psychologist says, and I know what you're making out of it. And Johnny says, what? And the psychologist says, you're making a psychologist. And Johnny says, wrong. Not enough cow dung. And they called Johnny retarded. So people will tell you you're crazy when you begin to see through the insanity of our culture. Right? There are people, and I interviewed a woman a few weeks ago, Lauren Spiro, and it's available on journeystream.org/podcast. And she was very bright and very creative, and she was 14 years old when her father was killed. And a year and a half later, working through her grief, working through the teen years with a single mother as a parent and the trauma of losing her father, she went out for a walk one night and felt this flood of energy. And the energy grew more and more intense until eventually it was God talking to her. And it was uplifting, and it was positive, and it was exciting. And when she went home from her long walk, she went in and told her mother that she's excited and she thinks she's got a purpose in life and that she should call the president and, start, sharing these wonderful ideas about how to make the world a better place. And she went to bed. And the next morning, her mother took her straight to the psychiatrist, who said, take her straight to the hospital, do not even go home. And a year later, she finally got out. They locked her up and they drugged her because she had an enlightening, creative, lively, positive experience energetically. And, here we are all of these years later, and I'm sure you can tell if you listen to the interview, that Lauren currently, fully an adult, and she's intelligent, and she's creative, and she's high-functioning, which means that when she was 14 and 15 and 16 years old, she was intelligent and creative and pretty high-functioning. And yet, when she saw things differently, when she had an experience energetically, spiritually, emotionally, that was more different, more true than what the culture at the time was calling her to believe, they called her crazy. And because of what the culture was prone to do at that time, they locked her up and drugged her. Well, eventually she got out, finished high school, finished college, finished a master's in clinical community psychology, and she's been an advocate for people who've had mental health crises ever since. So we're advocating for you, for me, for all of us, to question things more and more deeply, to understand more and more accurately what it is that we're doing that creates our mental, emotional, and psychological suffering. Because once we understand that, we can change it. And Michael and Jeannie are making available absolutely free, powerful tools to facilitate those changes, to deepen our understanding of the hidden processes in our own mind that get activated that create our perception and therefore create our suffering. The only way to get out of something is to see through it. We're not asking people to denounce or run away, because when you fight something, you're tied to it forever. As long as you're fighting something, you're giving it power. You give it as much power as you are using to fight it. So, seeing through it, understanding at deeper and deeper levels, true perception, as Michael Rice would call one of the spiritual faculties, that's what frees us from the mess we make. Oh, the tangled web we weave when first we practice to perceive. Now, most of us have heard that quote as, oh, the tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive, to lie. But it came to me a few years ago that, as Course in Miracles points out, perception is made as an attack on God. Perception is our distorted picture that we, each of us, make up as different based on our interactions with what's actually happening, based on the interpretation we make from the tiny bits of information we get through our senses, etc. So it came to me to say, oh, the tangled web I weave when first I practice to perceive. And in my perception, I create an image of myself as separate from other people, I create an image of myself as having certain qualities that I identify with and then I need to defend. And therein lies the root of most of my suffering. So, the more we can question, the more we can step back and be the observer, watching how we're creating the upsets that we experience, the more we get to see our own life, our own process from a different angle. And when we're open and questioning everything, then we start to dismantle our brainwashing. Whether we realize it or not, every one of us has been conditioned, indoctrinated, brainwashed in ways we can't even begin to imagine. And that's one of the ways to think of what's the process of enlightenment. It's waking up to the conditioning. It's waking up to the brainwashing. Anthony DeMello says, and so in order to wake up, the only thing you need, what you need the most, is not energy or strength or youthfulness or even great intelligence. The one thing you need most of is the readiness to learn something new. The chances that you will wake up are in direct proportion to the amount of truth you can take without running away. How much are you ready to take? How much of everything you've ever held dear are you ready to have shattered without running away? How ready are you to think of something that's unfamiliar? Most people's first reaction to this is one of fear. It's not that we fear the unknown. We can't fear something we do not know. Nobody's afraid of the unknown. What you really fear is the loss of the known. What you fear is the negative projection that you place into the unknown. So, the more we're willing to question everything, the more we're willing to do as every worksheet calls me to cancel my need to be right, cancel my need for anyone or anything to change, cancel my need to make up another story out of these brain cells to prove that I'm right, even though in the process of my perception in the moment, while I think I'm so right, I'm creating the negative emotion that's so unpleasant that I'm motivated to pick up a worksheet to get rid of it. How bizarre is that? Even when I'm busy creating my experience and I create an experience that's so unpleasant, I reach for a tool to undo the painful aspect of it, I still want to cling to the fact that I'm right. So the way to have happiness, the way to enlightenment, is to question everything, to be constantly questioning, to walk in and realize, as the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery tell us over and over again, I don't know what anything is or what it's for. I don't know what any of my brothers or sisters need in any given moment. I don't know what I need. I don't know who created me or when I was created. So when the part of my mind that's been so brainwashed and conditioned to think it knows, when it screams at me or it screams at somebody else that it's right and someone else is wrong, that could be my wake-up call. I can reprogram myself so that I understand at deeper and deeper levels that every time I'm in pain or fear or sadness and a part of my mind wants to tell me that it's right, my mind is right, and the world is wrong, I could choose to use that, reprogram myself to have that be my wake-up call. I don't have to keep creating more of the problem, and then being unhappy with the problem, create a belief and a perception that shows me how someone or something outside of me must have created it. I can choose to understand and start programming myself to see how I'm creating the problems I experience in my life. So we have about 3 minutes left. We have another hour coming up. This is a Friday, so there will be a weekend with no shows, but we'll be back next week. And again, we have 2 support groups coming up next week, one Tuesday, one Thursday. Feel free to join us. The information about how to do that is at mindshiftersacademy.org, a separate page for each Tuesday and Thursday group. So join us or pass that information along to somebody. Do yourself a favor. Do them a favor. It's a loving community of people. It's a powerful set of tools. It's a joy to be around people who've decided that instead of eating something they don't need to eat, or drinking something they don't need to drink, or buying something they don't need to buy, or sitting in front of a video screen or a television show, they're actually going to spend the time to learn about themselves and make their lives better. And that's a blessing, and we invite you to join us for that blessing on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central. And let us know if we've got a comment or a question for us, or a topic you would like to have us explore. I'd like to thank Ellen today for the recommendation about the book by Richard Moss, M-O-S-S. And there's a couple books that he's written. One of them is The Mandala of Being, Discovering the Power of Awareness. And the other one is, well, you'll find it. He's got a couple different books written in 2010, Inside Out Healing, Transforming Your Life Through the Power of Presence is the second title. So I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And I will welcome Jeannie Rice if she is available to turn on her microphone.
I am. Thank you, Dr. Kim. Yeah. I hope you have a good weekend.
Thanks. Same to you. Have a great show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.